You know, as we're coming into the wintertime, there's two questions I get asked the most, and they are, can I have my fence installed in the winter? And should I have my fence installed in the winter? So we're going to look at the possibilities and the benefits of having your fence installed in the winter. But before we get into that, if you find this content helpful, encouraging, heck, even a little entertaining, it would mean the world to us if you gave it a like. That sends a signal to YouTube. It lets them know that we're providing content that people enjoy. Also, if you're new here, please consider subscribing. And when you do subscribe, hit that notification bell and set those notifications to all so that YouTube lets you know each and every week when we have new content available. With all that being said, let's dig into it. All right, so the first consideration on can you have a fence installed in the winter is going to be location. Now, obviously, if you're in the southern states, Florida, Texas, Georgia, Louisiana, any of the southern states, wintertime is still a fine time to have fence installed. It doesn't typically get cold enough to really impact the building of a fence. You know, here in the Southwest Missouri, we also build throughout the year. Now, we get a little bit colder winters. We get a little bit more ice and snow, but typically not enough to really hinder the building of fence. But when you start getting much more north, say, into the Dakotas, say, typically it's going to be a little bit harder to build fence. Now, that doesn't mean it doesn't get done, but it's going to depend on a few more factors. So the second consideration on whether or not the fence can be built during the winter is going to be the type of the project, which is it a residential project or is it a commercial project? The reason this is important is typically the contractors that install these larger commercial projects typically have larger commercial scaled equipment. The larger commercial scaled equipment is going to be more suited to digging deeper holes or bigger holes, but typically it's just going to be more powerful so that as the ground freezes, it has more power available to dig through or pound through that frozen turf. Whereas contractors that typically install residential fences don't have the type of room needed for this larger commercial equipment. The smaller residential sized equipment typically doesn't have the power needed to get through solidly frozen ground. The first two considerations really actually hinge on a third consideration, and that is going to be the method of the installation. Specifically, how are the fence posts being installed? A lot of contractors still dig posts and set the posts in concrete. We do. However, there's a large number of contractors, and it seems to be growing each and every year, that prefer to drive their posts directly into the ground. Now, typically the posts are significantly longer, so they actually anchor themselves into the ground, into the surrounding bedrock if there is that available. And there's some discussion on which is better, whether you're setting a post directly into concrete, if you're setting a post and just surrounding it by gravel or the earth itself, or if you're driving the post. This is not the video to debate which of those is better. I'm just saying they're available. And typically the posts that are driven, they're using the more powerful equipment to drive these posts into the earth and through any sort of rock they encounter until they hit solid bedrock. And so that machinery is going to be more suited to also driving these posts through frozen ground. So the contractors that are driving posts are seeing that they're able to build fence throughout the wintertime, more or less regardless of where they are. Now, I understand there are going to be situations where driving posts still isn't even an option. In the far northern regions of the United States, and our brothers and sisters to the north and in Canada, there probably are going to be situations where the ground is still even too frozen for driving posts. But the contractors that drive posts do say that they're able to build fence in the northern climates, even for a more prolonged period than the contractors that are setting posts directly in the ground with, say, a concrete solution. All right, so if we've concluded that building fence in the wintertime is a possibility for your project in your region, then I think it's probably the best time to get that fence installed. And here's why. First, lead time. There's a lot more people that want fence built in the summertime because there's still the thought that fence can only be built in the summer. So in the wintertime, there's less fence being built. The lead time between the contract being signed, the deposit being put down, and the guys showing up to build your fence is a lot less. In our particular case, the summertime, the lead time can be 6 to 10 weeks sometimes, where in the wintertime, it can get back to 4 to 6 weeks. You can save yourself several weeks of lead time by having that fence installed in the winter. The second benefit of having your fence installed in the wintertime could be that you end up paying less for that project than you would have in the summer months. The reason being, the manufacturers of these fencing materials keep producing them throughout the year. But demand tends to fall in the wintertime because there's still a thought that fences are only built in the summer. So the manufacturers, to try to sell this supply, typically offers specials on their materials. So once that special is passed along to you, the consumer, you could end up paying less for the same fence. The third benefit I see to having your fence installed in the wintertime, it's going to be easier on your landscaping. So consider this. Typically in winter months, your landscaping has gone dormant. It's preparing itself for harsh weather and hard conditions. It's a lot more hardy, it's a lot more robust than it would be in the spring or summertime when it's blooming, and it's a bit more fragile. So having your fence installed in the winter rather than in the summer could likely mean less damage, if any at all, to landscaping surrounding the fence installation area. So to recap, can you have your fence installed in the wintertime? Absolutely, as long as these certain criteria are met. Should you have your fence installed in the wintertime? I think you should. And not only should you, I think it is the best time to have your fence installed. Guys, I appreciate you sticking around with me. For now, I'm Joe Everest, the fence expert, reminding you that good fences make good neighbors.